Welcome back to the channel. So we've gotten a lot of 5 stars recently, and I do think most 2.x characters have held up fairly well, even if they aren't as broken as they used to be. But there are some, especially from 1.x, that have not fared quite as well. So I might have to look at some of the more outdated 5 stars and kind of see why they are so bad. And when I say outdated, I mean like they used, but now they aren't. So someone like Yanqing isn't going to be here since he was bad even when the game came out. Let's start with probably the most obvious one out of all of them, Seele. Seele has really just done nothing. You know, being the first limited 5-star, we knew she was probably going to get power gripped, but she has just fallen off so hard. At least the other characters have gotten something from, dedicated supports to just a straight up buff. But the only thing Seele kind of has as sort of a dedicated support is Bronya, but I don't even know if I'd really count that. And now we have Archer, who is free and does what Seele wants to do, but just way better. The main problem with Seele is a couple of things. One, her traces are really bad. Her A4 is okay, since it just makes her do more damage, but her A6 makes no sense, since you almost never want to use her basic. And yeah, she is very SP hungry, and there will be times where she can't use her skill, but why not have something that helps alleviate that problem, like maybe getting a skill point back after killing a certain number of enemies, or just something instead of just getting a turn slightly faster when using your basic, which is gonna barely do anything. And her A2 is basically useless. It is one of the worst traces in the whole game. You are almost never going to stay at 50% HP, so it's not even gonna be active for half the fight. And even if it does activate, it only makes you less likely to be attacked, which could just not do anything anyway because you're just relying on RNG. And even then, a lot of enemies and bosses have AoE attacks anyway. I think it is maybe meant to show her, being more, stealthy, but why not have something like she does bonus damage the first time she hits an enemy? I think it fits thematically, makes more sense for her gameplay since she wants to be able to, one-shot minions to get Resurgence. Speaking of Resurgence, it just doesn't do enough. Compared to Archer, who gets way more of a damage buff, since he gets 100% and it can be stacked twice, and Seele can only activate Resurgence once. To be honest, I think you could make it so it could trigger on every kill, but just make it so that it can't be stacked. Or if you wanted to be able to make it stacked, maybe just nerf the buff, because getting an 80% damage buff on every kill would be way too good. Another character that did kind of get screwed over by Archer because he's just better in every way is Imbibitor Lunae. They fill almost the exact same role, but Archer is just better. But Imbibitor Lunae just has some AoE, and that's it. It's so insanely expensive to use at the max version, so it's really hard to get it consistently, especially since he doesn't really have anything in his kit to actually get skill points back. His ultimate does give him charges that can be used as skill points, but it has a decently high energy cost, so even with Sparkle, you aren't really going to always have the skill points for the max level skill, which is pretty bad, since the other 2 versions do way less damage. On top of that, his talent feels pretty weak, since his max skill does 7 hits, and he only gets a 10% damage buff per hit. So you're only going to get, the max damage buff for 2 hits. And since the damage buff goes away at the end of your turn, you can't even, stack it up so you can get it in the next hit, I don't know. His A4 also just kind of sucks, since like a lot of early characters, he has a defensive trace for just no reason. Just use a shielder or a healer, it's just going to be way better. If he had something to either be able to get skill points back, or to, boost his damage, then I think he could be a lot better, since he does feel close to being good, since he does have support with, Sparkle and Sunday, so if he did get a bit of a buff, like what, Blade and them got, I do think he could be a lot better. Now, for the last character, they have very similar problems, that being Clara. Clara does have a decent amount of support, with Robin and all the follow-up stuff, but Yunli, it does literally the exact same thing as her, but it's just better. She does way more damage, she can get her ultimate a lot more consistently since she has energy regen in her kit, and has a taunt on top of that. The only thing that's kind of worse is that she needs to actually have a decent amount of timing, but even that's just use her ultimate when you're about to get attacked, and she can have 2 ultimates at the same time. So, she is just way better. The main problem is that if Clara doesn't get hit, she just doesn't do anything. since the main way she's going to get energy is by getting hit. On top of that, she has this like weird marking mechanic that just feels way too clunky to use, since you need to get hit and then mark the enemy, and then your skill will be able to do extra damage. And even if you get the mark, her skill doesn't even do that much damage anyway. And also, like, why does her ultimate not do extra damage to marked targets? I feel like that would make more sense, you know? And also, I feel like her E1 should just be a part of her base kit. Like, I don't know why that's an Eidolon. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, most of her traces, I would say, are fine. But, like, why does she have 2 CC traces? I feel like it would make more sense to just combine them. Or just keep her A2 and have her A4 kind of have a way of, you know, being able to, like, taunt enemies or something. Because the main problem with sort of counter characters like this in general is that they're not great in modes based around timers, which all of the endgame modes are. So they are really good against fast enemies, but against slow enemies, she just doesn't really do anything. And Yunli does also kind of have this problem, but it is alleviated a bit because she just does way more damage. Now, I am not saying that any of these characters are, like, unplayable. You can make most of them work with enough investment. I mean, I use Clara a decent amount, and I've had a good amount of success with her. But that doesn't change the fact that these characters have problems with their kits and should be fixed. Like, especially since Seele is on the 50-50 loss thing now, like, there's no reason why she shouldn't get buffed. Especially since we have seen that buffs can help characters a lot. I mean, Civil Wolf went from just being really mediocre to one of the best supports in the game right now, and, like, I really hope that they announce more buffs soon, because if they don't, people are definitely going to start getting way more annoyed, because I definitely think that's definitely one of the main disappointments people had with 0.6, is that they didn't announce more buffs or anything like that, or changes to endgame modes. Because besides just the lack of events, power creep is the main problem that people have had right now. While I don't think it is as bad as some people make it out to be, like people have said characters like Faishao or Firefly are unplayable, which is just straight up not true. But there are definitely a lot of characters that need help, and I really hope that they announce buffs soon. But I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.